I don't know about you, but anytime I see Helen drop the monthly community newsletter for DC Dark Legion, I stop what I'm doing and go over to the Discord and read it. We just got the September edition of the community newsletter, and it's packed with a lot of helpful information about game modes and events and other things about the game that we've either already been asking questions about or maybe we got a vague answer to in the past. And she's trying to address some of those in a little bit more details today. Now, usually she will take the information from the feedback section of the official Discord and try to respond to some of that. But this time she has scoured the dev Q&A questions that we asked, and she's picked out a few important questions that may have already been answered by Helen before, and she just wants to bolster some of those responses or give us a little bit more insight. Keep in mind that this is not the dev Q&A response. There will be an official dev Q&A response coming in the next few weeks, and I expect a lot more really good questions to be asked and answered in that dev Q&A that we're going to be getting. Definitely going to be featuring that prominently on this YouTube channel whenever that shows up. But let's jump in and look at some of these questions and we'll go through Helen's responses. The first question that was posed was, or statement really, was that there's a severe lack of things to do with your drones and chips when you get to the end game. And specifically, it's very difficult to earn any points on day one of Supreme Commander without spending a massive amount of anvils to get there. It looks like they are working on some sort of a system that's going to be an infinite way to consume drones and chips for Supreme Commander points in the future. Obviously, the tech is not quite ready yet, but I would look for something in the next month or so, maybe the next community newsletter that we get towards the end of October with a little bit more details on how this system is going to work. Honestly, anything that makes Supreme Commander easier to do at the late game is going to be helpful. We have other issues that need to be solved, a couple of the other days that are quite difficult as well, but being able to solve the drone and chip issue is definitely going to make quality of life a lot better for players. There's a question asked about league technology and that being maxed out. It looks like they are going to be adding some additional league technology, which is going to be great for just overall base efficiency and battle efficiency for your champions. But it also appears that this is going to be a system that we're going to be able to catch up to fairly easily. We do have the Make Your League Great Again feature where you can do infinite amounts of league donations. So I really don't see this one as a major issue, but I'm very happy to see that they are going to be adding some different league tech for us to be able to research. This is another question that gets asked a lot, and that's, will you add more legendary characters to the game? And the answer is no. Essentially, they don't plan on adding any more legendaries to the game. And this is something that Helen has discussed repeatedly on the Discord at this point. Basically, these legendaries are easier to star up, but their power ceiling is a lot lower than your mythics and limited mythics. So while it is good at the early stages of the game for you to have access to some of these legendary champions to get your account kickstarted, they're not champions that are going to scale well as you build your roster out. And we're seeing that even with people who have been free to play for 6 or 7 months now. They're able to get access to some of those mythic champions and limited mythic champions at much higher star levels, and it just forces you to phase out a lot of your legendaries. You're probably still using your Green Arrows and Miras and Wonder Woman champions, which Wonder Woman has the Mythic Ascension event, and that's really kind of the point that I think Helen is trying to drive home is, over time, they're trying to make it easier to access the Mythic champions, and they're also trying to give us a bunch of Mythic Ascension events for the legendaries so that you get a legendary champion to max 5 red stars, and you'll be able to ascend them to the Mythic level. When you do that, they're going to be around the 5 purple range, and then you have very viable Mythic champions in your roster. So, this whole idea of like adding more legendary champions is kind of a moot point, I think, at this time. I'm just excited that promising us that they're going to be adding more ways for us to obtain the mythics, which I think is positive. We talk about champions or teams like Bat Family, which we just had this big Bat Family event and the Batman celebration. It's very difficult to build that team because it's hard to get shards of all those Bat Family characters. If we can get more Robin and Batgirl and some of those other key champions, Cyborg, a lot faster, then people are going to complain much less about, needing more legendary or starter champions in their roster. So I'm most excited about the fact that they're continuing to emphasize the Mythic Ascensions, and fairly positive that we're going to be getting the Red Hood Mythic Ascension at some point in the future. I think it seems to have stalled out a little bit so that they could focus on some of the other events, but we're probably going to be getting him in the game in the next 45 to 60 days, which is really sweet. And that's kind of the next question here. And Helen is being cryptic as usual, but also dropping plenty of hints. There's definitely going to be a Red Hood Ascension. And it also looks like there's going to be more of the Trial of Olympus type maps, which we're going to be getting one of those for Red Hood. And I'm really interested in seeing that story. They like to do sort of a comic book strip as you go through the different areas where the characters are talking to each other. So really cool champion in Red Hood, and definitely want to see more about how that story unfolds. And the next question is another interesting one. I think it's going to have a huge impact on how things are done in the future. And it kind of ties into the idea of giving us more ways to earn champions. The question is, will there be more characters launched through ways other than the bleed? And Helen's response was that from time to time, they're going to be introducing new characters through special events. We saw the crypto event, and it looks like we're going to be getting a special one in the next few weeks, probably closer to Halloween, for the at least one of the special variants that's going to be coming to the game. I doubt we're going to get special events for both variants. With the second one is mentioned somewhere here, so I'm curious how that one's going to come to the game. Maybe it's in the form of the bleed, but I guess we'll have to stay tuned on that one. But I'm happy to see that there are more of these special events coming. We've had really good success for free-to-play players with crypto, and I'm hoping that that kind of pushes forward. One thing that I am a little bit concerned about is, we get confirmation in this newsletter that the new special variants are not going to be limited mythic champions like the bleed limited mythics, but they're also not going to be regular mythics from some of the confirmations we've received in the past on the Discord. So what are they going to be? Are the special variants going to be a tier above limited mythics where they're more expensive, or is it going to be kind of a middle of the road tier where their stats scale better than a regular mythic but not quite as good as a bleed limited? So really curious to see how that works. I personally have my sights set on at least one of those special variants, and I'm pretty positive at this point that it's going to be Death Metal Wonder Woman, and she'll tie into the Amazons team. So, especially with those Hippolyta changes being reverted, there's a full expectation that Death Metal Wonder Woman character is going to be incredibly powerful. And I think also with Donna, who we do expect to be coming around the same time as the special variant event, we should have a pretty formidable Amazons team. And I'm happy to be able to try to give you some footage of how that team is going to work at a high level. So next question, on global servers, it's very difficult to get everyone online at the same time for Umbral Rift, Great Krypton Rush, Gotham, etc. Why don't you do something like a 24-hour boss where everyone can attack on their own time? This is one that I've been pushing for a very long time, like since well into the beta back in 2024. And it just doesn't seem like this is something that we're going to be getting anytime soon. There's a lot of discussion here about how DC Dark Legion is a strategy game first, not a RPG. And, it's a little bit unfortunate. I think it's kind of difficult. Like, we're in a spot where there are competitor games out there, not to name names, and those competitor games focus more on the RPG element. And so there has to be kind of a distinction between the two. So, we fall into that strategy game bucket. Most of the content is going to be strategy, a lot of ship combat, and a lot of combat where you need to be online with your team. And I know that's difficult, especially for folks who aren't in the US. It's quite difficult to try to schedule everything and get everything to work out. You know, if you're in Asia Pac, you're going to be the opposite time of everybody else. So like if it's lunchtime, if it's 12 noon in the US, it's going to be 12 midnight in Asia Pac countries and Australia. So, you know, it's very difficult line to or balancing act, I think, especially now that Guardian Challenge is going to be during the middle of the week for people's work schedules and home life. But you know, I'm okay with some of the response here. I don't mind having events where you have to be online with your teammates, but I do wish that we had some sort of a boss that you could hit that was league driven, that had like a 24-hour time limit on it. You see that in a lot of other games, even strategy games, you see that. So obviously we have the combat cycle bosses, and what I don't understand is why can't we have like the Batman who laughs at, and we'll talk about him in just a second. I have speculation on that, but why can't we have the Batman who laughs as a league boss that we can all fight together, 24-hour period, give us some rewards? It's kind of like it would be a cross between Combat Cycle and Umbral Rift, where we're all going up against the same battle, and it's very difficult to take down. There could be different tiers of it, but like that's the kind of thing that I think a lot of people want as just like it doesn't even have to be the main focus for the game. If you're listening, devs, it just needs to be something that's there for the people who want to focus on it, and then obviously continue to push all of the league ship combat and things like that as 70% of the game. But we really do need some sort of a boss that we can take down together. So the explanation that we're getting is, again, I mentioned strategy games are primarily characterized by synchronous combat. Synchronous means everyone is online at the same time working together, versus asynchronous gameplay where you're online fighting against basically the AI because there's nobody there to fight you. What I do find promising about Helen's response is she does mention that nowadays strategy games contain RPG elements, and RPG games contain strategy elements. Meta Brawl is an asynchronous battle where it's champion based play, but it's on auto, which we'll get to that in another comment as well. And this comes from a question that I posed during the dev Q&A. But asynchronous battle where you're online, your opponent is offline, but right now there's no way for you to control it. So I don't really know that I even call that. It's not asynchronous or synchronous. It's really just you clicking a button and then a sim running, but that's a discussion for maybe later in the video. So anyway, the moral of the story here is Helen said they are open to adding more asynchronous game modes, and it says that we may hear more news about that very soon. So I'm super excited about that. We'll see what happens, and again, we'll talk about that a little bit later on in this video. The next question is, why don't you set Umbral Rift offline mode to launch ships instead of joining ships? This is a big complaint that a lot of us have had recently, especially since they added the offline mode. It's you have a lot of people who are setting offline Umbral Rift and they don't care about the game mode. They've basically quit playing it. And the way offline mode works in Umbral Rift, by the way, I might do an update to my Umbral Rift video. I think there's a lot of information that has come to light in the last few months that would make it worth redoing that. So let me know in the comments below if you want to see that. But the way it works now is if you set offline ships, you're just going to join other people's rallies. You don't set your own, and it causes a lot of issues. It's kind of a bottleneck for the online players. You feel more pushed if you're online to have to set more rallies instead of joining them, and it makes your scores go a lot lower because all the offline people are basically leeching onto those teams, and it makes it difficult for you to get an open spot to join. So definitely a small issue. They're not planning on changing it. Again, they've pushed this idea of having synchronized or synchronous gameplay where everyone is online at the same time. And the offline mode is meant to just be sort of a compromise so that some people can participate who maybe might be asleep whenever the game mode goes off. So I'm okay with how it works right now. Obviously, I have some issues with it, and I agree that there needs to be some sort of a fix to solve for the offline gameplay. I mean, honestly, at this point, they if they just removed the ability for you to do it offline, that would probably make me happier as someone who does try to participate in as many of those as possible. And here's the question that I asked: will you ever consider manual PvP, or will you add manual to Meta Brawl? I am. This is a hill that I'm willing to die on. It really frustrates me not being able to uh, use my brain and fight against the people that I'm fighting in PvP. The big thing that's being pushed from the dev perspective, and also I've seen this in the community too. I'm aware of that some people disagree with me, but the big thing that's being pushed is that it's unfair to people who are not able to kind of like fight back against the folks who are attacking them. But I've played like tons of games like this where it's you're fighting against an offline opponent. That's just how PvP combat typically works on these games. There's a lot of them that I could name: Raid Shadow Legends, Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. You have the same thing in Marvel Strike Force. Some of the biggest games in the kind of RPG space. And I know this is a strategy game, but some of the biggest games that are out there in the kind of like hero collector space, there are plenty of PvP modes where you're able to fight against an offline opponent and nobody complains about it. Like in some of the biggest, most widely known PvP modes in games like Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, where you have Grand Arena Championship, nobody complains about being offline. Like the whole point of that mode is that you set a bunch of defenses that you can't defend yourself. You just hope that your team comp can. And then you get banners based on whether your defense holds or whether the offense is able to push through. I feel like there has to be some sort of a compromise where I can feel like I'm being able to use my champions. Initially when the game was first in beta, we had the ability to control our ultimates for all our champions in all game modes, just our most game modes. And then we also had the ability to control our leaders' basic abilities. And like that was, I felt like this really cool kind of crossover mechanic because it was a kind of in the middle of like pure strategy games where everything is on auto versus a true RPG where everything is controlled by the player. And I just feel like there's a lot more strategy in having to use your brain and like look at the kits and know how the kits work rather than just figuring out what the right placements are and not even having to think about how the kits work. So again, sorry to get on a soapbox there, but really passionate about it. Obviously, Helen's response here and the dev response is that it's asynchronous, so other person is offline, and it's quote unquote not fair. Again, don't really think that is the way I would characterize it. But it seems like I have lost this battle, and I don't really want to continue to push it if most people don't feel that way. It's just unfortunate because I really don't like Meta Brawl at all because it just doesn't seem like it's challenging at all. I have a few folks who I've been putting some videos on the channel, been talking to some folks in the community, trying to talk to more of you guys. I know Claymore I've had some DMs with about Meta Brawl. Obviously Arcaluck, Oron. There's some other folks out there that I'd love to hear from. Some big whales that have reached out to share some content. So definitely DM me if you're at the high levels of Meta Brawl and want to talk strategy or kind of fill me in on why you think the game mode is fun, because I really do want to get more into it. If the game mode is going to be there, I want to cover it and enjoy it. So leave a comment down below. DM me on Discord. Love to talk to you about that one. Will we ever get skins? That's a good question, and Helen addresses that one here. Long term, they are open to the idea of skins, but I think the problem is right now they have to focus their development time on other things. They're still focused on trying to expand the roster and give us more champions first. And I agree with that. I don't like the idea of skins. Variants, perfectly fine. because the kits are going to be different. They're going to go in different teams. And really, I don't want to see too many variants that aren't the death metals. The death metal variants are important to this game as a whole because they kind of make up the story. A lot of these, no spoilers, but a lot of these death metal champions that are going to be coming are part of, the battle with the Batman Who Laughs and all the henchmen. So, it's like we need those characters in the game, but the other skins and variants, like we probably should be holding off on until we have, a few dozen more champions in the game. I do appreciate that Helen calls out the legacy weapons and how those are functional equivalents to skins. The new Swamp Thing legacy piece is really, really cool. I love the design of it. Let's just take a look really quick and appreciate it. So you can replace that and you can see, pretty decent looking character, pretty cool design. Kind of looks like Sasquatch. But if you throw the antler crown on him, he's going to get the wings. He's going to get this cool kind of butterfly aura around him, and he's going to get those amazing antlers on him as well. So it really does function as a skin, and I really hope that they'll continue to push that. It's a very unique element to the game. All right, moving on. We have a question about public APIs, and the answer is no, we're not getting an API. I think there's a lot of IP concerns that are, I would say, fairly warranted, especially coming from someone with a legal background. I get why they don't want to provide the API. I wish they would. It would make it easier for myself and others who are developing websites for the game to pull that data and give the community better information about the game. But without that, we're still trying to do our best to provide some of that data. It's just a lot harder to get a hold of it. Maybe in the future they'll change their mind, or if we provide some feedback to them on the things that we would like to see in game, like numbers and things like that, we should definitely be doing that, trying to give that to Helen and the team so that they can potentially consider ways to make it a little bit easier for us to scrub that information. Are more combat cycle bosses coming? And it looks like Slack asked this question. I'm glad that he did, because it looks like next month there's going to be, Helen says, a very well timed for the event and special variant. My theory, obviously, if we're going to be getting Death Metal Wonder Woman, is it's going to be Batman Who Laughs as kind of the final combat cycle boss, and it's going to be like a bigger, like harder thing to take down. So that goes back to the comment Helen made earlier in the community newsletter about, are we going to be getting more PvE content? Obviously, this is not going to be it appears it's not going to be a league-based event, but it's going to be offline content where you'll be able to do it without having to rely on the rest of your league mates. I'm really excited about this announcement. Again, I feel like they kind of buried the lead here. I can appreciate that Helen likes to do that sometimes and kind of like tease us a little bit. You get the winky face here, but I think this is going to make a lot of the PvE folks like me very happy to see this coming into the game. So we'll be monitoring that, and I will definitely be putting out a video as quickly as I can once we see that come into the game. Next question, they're asking about the server merges. It sounds like we are on track to be getting some of those server merges in the next few weeks. I think those first few are going to be for newer players to be able to switch to other servers, unless they're changing it up again on us and they're just going to actually start doing some merges faster than anticipated. But we should be able to get some of those fairly soon. They're probably going to focus on servers, if I had to guess, that have the lowest populations, and trying to get those moved into to servers that have a few more players active. But at any rate, we are going to be getting server mergers before the end of the year, hopefully, knock on wood. We also have a comment here that they are going to be considering support for returning players. So if you basically started your roster out and then you quit playing for a while and come back, probably some sort of a like welcome back event, like, hey, if you log in for the next 7 days, you're going to get some additional rewards. Maybe they throw a character in like Poison Ivy, or one of those early characters that you typically get some shards of, maybe Batman, should just incentivize you coming back and playing the game. Super happy to see that coming as well, because we have been around for a while now, and there's some folks who have kind of fallen out of favor with the game or had other things going on. So very happy to see that they want to focus on pulling players back into the game. And that's really it for this video. As a recap or progress check on the roadmap. Obviously, the special variant 1 is still on track for Halloween, so basically 3 or 4 weeks from now. The Teen Titans themed event has already happened. Ultimate Battle for Gotham launched. I'll have a video at some point in the future talking about Ultimate Battle for Gotham. I don't really like the way it's working right now, but I do want to give it another chance this weekend. We've got, I think, a more formidable opponent coming up, Server 203. Shout out to you guys. Looking forward to that. Probably after this video is filmed, that's going to be happening. So, Ultimate Battle for Gotham is kicked off, and it's going to be rolling out to more servers soon. Bat Family themed event just finished up. That went off, I think, really well. There were some hiccups with the event itself. It seems like they kind of halfway through gated the gift feature where you weren't able to get some of the bat scanners, but that's something that is going to be gated for future events as well. Maybe we'll have a discussion about that another time. New main storyline has been paused to develop some of these other things like the Mythic Ascension story and the special variant event. So I'm okay with that for now, but I really want to see that new main storyline before the end of the year. We got the next legendary ascension to Mythic. That's going to be Red Hood. And it looks like that's going to happen early November after all the special variant festivities are over with. Great Krypton Rush tournament, going to be early November as well. And special variant 2 on track for Halloween, but won't be part of the event. So again, curious how that's going to happen. Will it be a bleed, like a special second bleed or something like that? They've done that in the past. So curious about that one, and we'll cover that as soon as we have more news on it. And then Crisis in Time appears to be paused. They paused that so that they could add the new PvE game mode, which again, I assume is going to be Batman Who Laughs combat cycle style game mode. And then, I do hope that we're going to be getting this new PvP mode in the future, because I want to see something that's a little bit less stale than Gotham War, which again, we'll be covering that a little bit more in another video and talking about my opinions on Gotham War. And I'll give you maybe like a strategy guide on kind of how it works as well. Thanks for watching as always, and I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. You will get updates like this on either the day they happen or the day after, typically as quick as I can record them. And if not, I hope to see some of you guys on the next video.